to come in and we start chatting. So I want to welcome everyone into tonight's session. I can't remember how many people we have registered. We were getting registrations as recently as 15 minutes ago, so or 20 minutes ago. So I think it's over 20 that we have registered right now. So we might be getting more people coming in. So I want to welcome everybody to tonight's session. Tonight's session is about Illinois social equity groups. And the reason why I put this session together is because, oh, someone just registered. I just got an email. So the reason why I just put this session together is because when we were on the session about the lawsuits, which was probably about, well, it's been 3 weeks since the court date, so 4 weeks ago. One of the things that came up was, how the lawsuit got started and whatnot, and really the role that the groups are playing to try to get things moving forward and to get, to level the playing field for every one of you all, so it's basically social equity led and social equity advocacy. And so it seemed really important to me that for those of you who had not connected yet, to give you guys an opportunity to connect and to be able to hear directly from some of the leaders in the groups that at least that I knew of and that I was aware of, to be able to have those direct conversations so that you do have the opportunity to connect and decide if you want to participate in the group or not. And at least at minimum, to hear directly from them on the work that they're doing and why they're doing it and what they do, so on and so forth. Before we get into that, I'm just going to do some housekeeping really quick. We do have another session tomorrow, which is on recruiting for your cannabis business. So I am so bad with names, and I can remember her name and not the name of her business right now. So Shawnee Williams, I can't remember the name of her business, but her organization, her business specifically deals with cannabis recruiting and cannabis placement. They actually help recruit for cannabis businesses. They do training for people who want to be employed in cannabis. So there are things that come into play when you own a cannabis business that you have to be mindful of that don't occur, if you're selling jeans, or, any other type of, business. So she's going to be able to talk about those concerns and things that you have to do to be able to recruit for your cannabis business. Illinois Equity Staffing. Thank you, Belicia. She's going to be able to talk through those things tomorrow. So that's going to be tomorrow afternoon. That session starts at 12:30. So the registration for that session is still out there. And if you registered for this session via the email that I sent, then you would actually see the registration for that session for tomorrow. And Sanette, can you actually put that in the chat for people, since I know there's not going to be enough time for me to probably send a link tonight for everybody to see it. So if anybody wants it and you're looking for it quickly and you haven't registered yet, Sanette will put a link to that in chat for you. Also, for those of you who don't know, who logged in late, who didn't hear like the pre-chit chat conversation, I want you all to know I was on a meeting earlier today, just a few hours ago, with the governor's office. And we were on the phone for an hour and a half and nobody asked the question about the elephant in the room. So, I had to ask, what's up with the licenses? Do you know anything? Or have you heard anything? Can you give us any insights? And the joke was, I thought I was going to get out of here without having to answer that. I'm thinking, yeah, no, not if I'm here, because every email I send and every phone call I have, at least with DCEO, I'm like, so have you heard anything? I know you're going to tell me no, but at least need to give you the opportunity to tell me no. So here's what was said. This is not an official word. And it was a caveat given when it was said, which is don't hold me to this, but the governor's office is hopeful that the licenses will be issued in January. That's all that really could be said concerning that. There was no other information. I was like, well, hey, it's something. And when she said, well, don't hold me to the date, my response was, I'm not holding you to any dates because every date that I've heard thus far has already come and gone. So I know what these dates mean. There was no specific date. Somebody just typed retail or ag. She did not say. I'm assuming both. And I will say this. One of the statements that was made was, it's not like we're sitting here not wanting them to be issued. Everybody wants them issued. So the desire is for them to get issued. I don't think the desire is as strong as it is for us for them to get issued, but we all have skin in this game. You guys want licenses to be able to start doing your works, establishing your businesses, or reapplying, in the next round. We want you guys to have licenses so that we can continue to work our program that we have anticipated to be able to support you guys. So we're all kind of stuck in limbo here. The other piece of good news, I think I put this in the email I sent when I advertised this session, is that our grant was extended by DCEO. So if licenses get issued in January, we've been extended 6 months. We were originally supposed to end January 30th, but that has been extended to June 30th. So we will still be around to provide support for an extended period of time. It will not be a rush job. And to give you guys insight on what support looks like after the licenses have been issued, what our plans are is for 40 people who get licenses from ag. That's what we have budgeted. It doesn't mean that we won't get more. But 40 people who have licenses from ag to be able to get direct one-on-one meetings with consultants from Higher Yields, and you will get assessments and project plans. And then my team will actually, help you track those plans as you implement those implementation plans. The other piece as it relates to retail dispensaries, same thing for them. In addition to that, we would also be doing security vulnerability assessments of the dispensaries. As you guys know, especially those of you in Chicagoland, which is I know most of you, when there was protests going on, some of the dispensaries were hit. So there's obviously, even though we know that they have security in place already, we know that having somebody come in after the security has been in place to say, here's where you're vulnerable, would be helpful. So that's one of the things. And then of course, the one-on-one business planning, HR planning, consulting, all of those things will still be available as well. So I want to make sure that everyone is aware of all of those things that might be coming up. And the last piece of housekeeping before I turn over to Paul is, as always, as we proceed through this session, if you have questions, type them in the Q&A box. Don't necessarily type them in the chat, because I'm sitting here and I see 11 prompts on my screen because I haven't opened the chat because I was talking, because I can't read and talk at the same time. So if you type them in the Q&A box, I guarantee you I will get through every single question because I can clear them as I get through them. I get lost in the chat. So, and I will moderate those questions with Paul and with Belicia when it's our turn to present, so that way all of your questions get answered. So with that being said, the Q&A, I just saw that pop up. The Q&A box should be, if you're on a computer, it should be at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a phone, I think you have to click on the 3 dots. Yeah, and it'll come up. So you type your questions in there. I'll make sure I get to those. So tonight we have Paul Magelli, who will present first, Belicia Royster, who will present second. They will both talk about their organizations. I have spoken with both of them extensively before. They are just like you. They're one of your own, your people. And so at this point, I will turn off my mic and turn off my video and turn it over to Paul. And if I see questions pop up, Paul, I'll come back.
And can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Well, first of all, thank you, Tricia. You've done a great job on behalf of the community, and it's great to know that you're there and have been supporting applicants really on this, what is now a very long journey, but that you'll also be there going forward for applications. Belicia, great to be presenting alongside you. You guys have done, at SEEM, have done a tremendous amount of great work, and look forward to continuing to advocate alongside you as we push forward. So what I'm going to speak about this evening is the Illinois Craft Cannabis Association. And just as an upfront commentary, when I say craft, I mean growers, infusers, and transporters. Growers, infusers, and transporters. So if I use the word craft, assume it's all of those. And a lot of people think it is just the grow part, but it's in fact transporters, infusers, and growers. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we got started, a little bit about the organization. So 3 parts. First, tell you a little bit of just about the association itself. So we're a nonprofit organization, and we're member founded, member led, and business focused. And so when I say business focused, the craft community is going to be unique. It's a very sort of unique community, as if you look across all states, the idea of smaller scale growers where there's carved out licenses doesn't necessarily exist everywhere. And so if this organization is going to survive, if the community is going to survive, craft is going to survive, indeed thrive, we think the business interests of that community need to come foremost, particularly as the first sets of licenses are awarded. And so so you'll see the topics that the Craft Association focused on is largely, almost exclusively moving forward the business interests of the community. And so, I've said a little bit, about craft growers, infusers, and transporters. We think about craft essentially as, there's 40 initial licenses for craft growers, there's 40 initial licenses for infusers, and a limited number of licenses for transporters. Those numbers will grow, as subsequent rounds of licenses are issued. And you'll see in a moment, we're focused on licensees, those that will eventually receive those licenses. But we're also very much interested in supporting the broader community. So prospective applicants for those licenses, or indeed applicants, so people who have submitted applications or intend to submit applications in that community. We think there's a lot of shared learning to go on, and that's one of the basis and reasons we exist. There's a lot of work that goes into transporting, infusing, and growing that's unique to those sectors, and we think there's an opportunity to share sort of insight and experience to drive better business performance from those organizations. And you'll see our mission statement. And when we talk about a diverse cannabis sector, craft cannabis sector here, we mean not just the people that are participating. That's a very important part, but the fact that craft itself can exist. So, smaller operators can sustainably and profitably operate in this community, and that consumers have a diversity in choice of supply. So the products that they buy, most of you, will be aware in some regard. If you talk to folks that, if you go 3 years back, and when we had just medical dispensaries, there were, dozens of products available on the shelves, different types of flower and other products from at least a modest number of suppliers. That's largely dwindled. So as the big MSOs have gotten bigger, the diversity in product supply has gone down. And I think the intention of craft as it was formed is to provide a lot of choice for Illinois consumers. And so the Illinois Craft Cannabis Association, ICCA, is very much about ensuring that continued diversity of supply as well. So a broad definition use of the term diversity, obviously equitable, so that it's rooted in the social equity intent that the state has set forward, and ultimately sustainable and professional. And so that's where you'll see our efforts go as an association. Our membership is open, so if you'd like to join, as I said, we don't have any licensees today. We'll eventually have licensees, but it's applicants and prospective applicants as well. So we have a number of prospective applicants that are working to the next round that are already members and relying on others in the community to support them and their development. And then we also have some industry members, media members, and then some other community parties that are helping advance the interests of cannabis in Illinois. Membership currently is free, and you can cancel at any time. All it requires is an email to info@ilcraft.org that says, I'd like to become a member. Here's the type of member I am, so I'm a licensee or an applicant or a prospective applicant. There'll eventually be a fee for this organization. It'll largely rest with industry and licensees. We want an inclusive community, and therefore we've decided, in the interest of the whole community, to try to keep access to ICCA cost effective. Three primary tenets in terms of our focus as an organization, being member founded, sort of member led. One is research, education. Third is advocacy. So research, we believe there's a lot of information that is necessary to successfully operate a craft business. You've got to know who the dispensaries are, what product is selling. There's a lot of insight that goes into that, and we want to both, so first conduct research, and as well as bring together research and share that sort of market intelligence on behalf of the craft community, so craft operators and craft applicants can make better decisions. Everybody doesn't have to go out and do the same research. So we've already conducted a member survey. I'll show you a little bit about the results of that. We've got another one open around legislative activities that the Craft Cannabis Association is involved in. So we've got a head of research. She is primarily responsible for building that primary research, those surveys, and engaging with members, as well as pulling together other research information. From an education perspective, in a complementary sense to Tricia, we think there's a lot of information about how to build out your craft operations that operators don't need to repeat. So everybody's got to buy lighting. Everybody's got to buy an irrigation, fertigation system if you're a grower. Everybody's got to buy manufacturing equipment if you're a infuser. Everybody's got to buy transport equipment and sort of specialty things that go along with transporting craft cannabis. That doesn't need to be repeated by every applicant and every licensee. So you don't need to talk to 17 or 20 lighting vendors or X number of HVAC vendors. So we want to try to pull that together and make that available to the community so that there's at least a head start. That just keeps the cost down, candidly, so it makes the business faster and more profitable. And last is not advocacy. Last but not least is advocacy. And so we want to be a voice for this community, and we've taken a very aggressive view on that already. So I'll talk about it a little bit. We've actually to compel the state to issue licenses. We've sued the state, the governor himself, the head of the Department of Ag, so Mr. Costello, and Toy Hutchison. So since they have not been unable or unwilling to move forward with licensing, and they have a statutory obligation, the legislators gave them a date in law by which they must issue licenses. Since they have not done that yet, we are endeavoring through a variety of mechanisms, a lawsuit being one of those, to compel them to move forward. But we'll advocate on lots of other things. We'll also advocate on behalf of some of the legislative topics that are going to be important to craft. We think the craft community needs are going to be very different than the MSOs. So the kind of legislation we're going to need is to do things like raise the canopy limit, which is currently set at 14,000 square feet for growers, to something much larger. We're going to need to allow co-location facilities for infusers, or cooperatives for infusers, cooperatives for growers, those sorts of things. So we will do that actively from a legislative perspective. So if, If you're interested in contacting us, Dominique Bettenkorf currently looks after membership. Brian Keffy looks after our legislative program. I look after primarily advocacy, and Cece Shen looks after our research activities. Our two board members today are Ambrose Jackson and Bill Taki. Some of you may be aware of them from your tenure in the cannabis industry in Illinois. They're both very active and have a lot of experience. A couple upcoming things that we've got, sort of looking forward. So we've conducted an applicant survey. Again, I'll share a little bit of that in just a moment. And then we've got a current legislative priorities for the craft community survey that's open. So if you become a member and you're interested in weighing in on some of the ideas for upcoming legislature, and changes to the act, this is a way to get your input into that process. So the ICCA will consolidate that, and then we will go lobby with legislators for those changes. So generally, again, business focused. So things that raise the revenue line for infusers, transporters, or craft growers, and things that reduce costs for those organizations. From an education perspective, we're going to do some very specific things. ComEd has an incentive program that will rebate money directly as a cash check for investing in advanced energy saving technology. For instance, LED lights rather than HID or sodium lights if you're a grower, and other electrical improvements. So ComEd has a very specific way they do that. So we've got an upcoming education session and that sort of thing. And then on advocacy, you will see us. And first of all, Belicia, thank you and Scene and the Normal, Chicago Normal, and other organizations that are beginning to ramp up pressure on the governor and our legislature. There's been articles last week. There's a news release today that I saw that's trying to make clear that the need for the state to move forward on licensing and the impact it's having on all of the applicants, and especially social equity applicants. So we will continue to advocate as an organization, and that you'll see a lot more coming from us in what we're calling the Action Now campaign over the coming weeks. So there's three ways to sort of get to us. We've got a website, ilcraft.org. There's a way to sign up on that if you want to join. We've got a Twitter at Illinois Cannabis or IL Craft Cannabis. We've actually got a private Facebook group. I'll post the link. You can, if you want to become a member of ICCA, you can join the group. Again, that doesn't require much other than being an interested community member. But if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of whether or not you're an applicant or prospective applicant, in what areas, or then we've got an ongoing conversation there in that private group. Just for those of you that don't know, because I learned this through the process, Facebook doesn't let you search for the word cannabis. So even if you could, you can't find the group, but I'll put a link after this into the group chat. So we've got a bunch of groups that are beginning to form in those areas. Again, it's the craft community, so infusers, transporters, and growers. And then updates on the lawsuit we put online. There's a forming community of cultivators, growers, and that sort of thing. So we'll extend this set of topics as the community asks for communication. So I'm just going to switch topics, talk a little bit about the community, just to give you a sense. Tricia, you said this. This is actually a word cloud. So these words came out of a survey we did, and we ran them through a tool, and it produces this. But this is the kind of expression for how people are feeling in the craft community. The craft community has sat behind, in many ways, the dispensary community from a licensing perspective. So the state has wanted to issue dispensary licenses first, craft second. Many would argue craft should be first because it takes longer, but people are exhausted. They feel like the state is incompetent. They feel like Cresco and the other large operators are having a chuckle at our expense, et cetera. And so these are the really emotional words that go along with spending a huge amount of time and energy on a license process, application process, meeting all of our deadlines, and then having the state miss every one of theirs. And so, the reason for that is not surprising. If you look, we've done the analysis as part of our research work. The craft community, this is not dispensary, just the craft community, spent about $100 million in their application process. So if you look at infusers, transporters, and craft growers, so prospective licensees, applicants, just for the first 40, there's been about $100 million invested. And that's about 1 million hours, included 1 million hours of people's time. That's a lot of time and money for the state now to have done nothing, right? Make some promises and to meet their deadlines and have not, where they've not met them. About 62% of members of ICCA invested more than $100,000 in licenses. So nearly two thirds of folks invested a tremendous amount of cash dollars into their application process and invested a tremendous number of hours in that process. And so, these teams, particularly for craft, are not one or two people. When the state continues to delay, it's affecting lots of people. Nearly two thirds of our members have 10 plus team members. So that's a large family to keep appraised of things, and that's a lot of people that are being impacted and are candidly waiting for the state. It's also a huge risk. The state, this is not true for dispensaries, but it is true for craft. Sort of infusion and grow is people have to maintain property, they have to maintain zoning. In some cases, they were having to maintain a team if they qualified under option 3 for social equity. But they're having to invest about $5 million a month on a continuing basis or lose their property. And, more than half have told us that, by the time we get to the end of this year, they will have lost their property, in which they've probably invested at this point tens of thousands, I should say, or in some cases, well more than $100,000, and lose it. And when you go talk to a landlord and you say, I can't tell you when the licenses are coming out because the state won't tell us, that's not a very good ground for landlords to continue the terms under which you secured the property. And so very unfair in our opinion. And if you look at the total population, about 73% of teams are going to either lose their property, or they're going to lose their zoning, or they're going to lose their team by the end of this year. Basically, all of the investment in creating very viable social equity applications is disintegrating. And so this is why people are frustrated, and it's not a surprise. And most at this point said they can't be operational within 6 months. If the state issues, Tricia, let's hope, something in January, you can't break ground in most places if you're building a new facility or start a new construction in January. So it's, so the state's provided some relief for that, but not very positive. So just very quickly, if you look at the sort of character of craft, and this is looking across the ICCA membership, well more than 90% are social equity qualified. You didn't have to be social equity qualified to be a transporter, and that's why the number is not 100%. And nearly 60% are Black or Hispanic owned businesses, where they're at least a majority owned businesses. Of course, 100% are Illinois resident, and about 40% nearly of ICCA members also were dispensary applicants. So they applied for a dispensary and a craft application, which I don't know how anybody found enough time to do that. Huge effort. But if you look at the power of the craft community, this is not an insignificant economic sector. If just with the first 80 licenses, 40 infusion, 40 craft, and then whatever number of transport, there's about $200 million that'll flow into the Illinois economy for construction jobs that we clearly need right now. As we come out economically from COVID, the sector, just the first set of licenses, will generate substantially more substantially more than $500 million in annual revenue. That'll go to $1 billion or $1.5 billion. There are no industries being created that go from 0 to 500 million in a year. This is a very unusual community. And there's about 200 million, nearly 300 million of tax revenue that the state desperately needs, that it's unable to get until they issue these licenses. So, this community should have a lot of power. Right now, a lot of this advantage is going to the MSOs, sadly. So just as a quick licensing update, for those of you that aren't familiar with the craft community, about 455 applications were submitted for 40 licenses. on the craft grow side, about 114 for 40 licenses on the infuser side. So you've got a 1 in 10 chance, roughly, if you're a grower applicant, and you've got a much higher chance of success, 1 in 3 if you're an infuser applicant. And then about 250 transporter licenses. If you met all the requirements, you'll get a license. So that's how many went in. In the craft process, just as the applications came out at the beginning of the year, we should have those applications for infusion, transport, and grow should have gone in the middle of March, and licenses should have been issued by the end of June. And clearly, we're now 6 months beyond that. It's clear the state had made progress. They went through 2 rounds of deficiencies. The first round of deficiencies were essentially about incomplete things in the application. So improper, incomplete zoning, incomplete property, which are requirements for applicants, incomplete security plans, that sort of thing. And then the round 2 was strictly about social equity qualification. The state asked for additional information. By mid-August, and specifically by August 15th, we understood the state had completed scoring and were prepared to issue licenses. And then, early September, and the dispensary licenses came around. So we attempted to, as ICCA, begin negotiation. In September, we started negotiation with the state on a way forward. We got them to make a few changes, both in some of the relief we were asking for on behalf of the community. And then, sort of very quickly, as the state attorney general's office got involved, we made no more progress. And so we felt it necessary, subsequent to that negotiation, to file a lawsuit that we had shared with them, but had not filed. So we took a position. We wanted to negotiate. We don't want to be in a lawsuit, but the state was highly unresponsive. And so, or became highly unresponsive to the needs of this community. And so we progressed with that sort of lawsuit. I think it was Stuart had asked the question. So, why the delay on craft? And there's a host of reasons. It's probably not just one of these, but the most important thing is we don't know. We think we know a couple of these are contributors. We just don't know to what extent. So it's very clear to us that the state was poorly equipped for handling applications. The Department of Agriculture has less than a handful of people that work for it. The cannabis organization in the Department of Ag, they were simply not equipped for the licensing process that's to come, or the application process. So they were underfunded and poorly equipped. That's poor governance by our administration, by our state's administration. KPMG, everybody's aware of the fiasco there. Who knows? The state could be in commercial litigation, financial litigation, because of the poor performance, and that could be holding up everybody's license right now. It's clear they had scoring and ranking issues. We know what those were for dispensaries because the state made them available, the scores available, but we don't know what the issue is, if any, for craft. We suspect there is. The state has so much as told us they have issues and want to go forward with a 3rd round of deficiencies. There's the dispensary lawsuits. Somehow craft is the wagon that's hitched behind dispensary, and we can't seem to uncouple it. The state's clearly using COVID as a cover. If you ask me, the number one reason for failure is that from an association perspective, ICCA perspective, that we simply have had a failure in leadership, and that starts with our lovely governor, J.B. Pritzker. So the only way this process moves forward is when he gets involved. Sadly, his departments and his attorneys are not moving this forward. And then there's lots of other conspiracy theories. So Stuart, I think you had asked the question about, why is why is the state not moving this forward? It is very surprising to us. The state did not take an aggressive approach on the lawsuit in terms of their defense. They took a very weak one. And our view is they really don't care what the outcome is. If a judge tells them to go forward, they'll go forward. It's a good reason, and it's an excuse, it's cover for them. If the judge says don't go forward, then they've got more time to dilly-dally. And so they really are rather neutral about the outcome. They did not do a good job defending the lawsuit. And I'll answer your a little bit more about your question in a moment. So we're in the middle of a lawsuit. We are 3 weeks from our hearing. We are waiting for a timely decision the judge has promised and not delivered on. We had hoped today was 3 weeks from the hearing. So we've asked for two things from the state, really. One is release of the licenses. If they're unable to do that, release the scores. And then second is relief, meaning provide uniform relief that's fair and equitable, that allow people to stop spending money until such time as the state decides to issue licenses. There should be no reason that applicants are compelled to continue to spend money to sustain their application if the state's unwilling to move forward with licensing. It's just unfair. So the first part of the lawsuit was heard. That's what we're waiting for the judges to rule, which is release of the scores and licenses. And then we will have a second hearing for the nature of injunctive relief that we've asked for to provide, again, uniform. So that is what I've just described is the nature of advocacy that the ICCA is undertaking. And again, we're going to amplify that with a very public media campaign over the coming weeks. So you'll see hashtags like let my people grow, or the one we've borrowed, I think, Belicia, may have been from you guys, which is pound epic failure, which is how we feel like the state is not performing. So, and you'll see a few more from us, but I like pound let my people grow. So, that's a little bit about ICCA. So be happy to take any questions if you want to do that now.
Yes, we have a few questions in the Q&A box. So the first question says, oh wait, now there's a question that says answered. Who answered? Oh, Belicia answered that. Okay, thank you, Belicia. So I'm gonna read it out loud just so everybody has had an opportunity to see it. So first question was, are there any licenses for business to consumer delivery licenses? And Belicia answered the question, which says, not currently. It has yet to be implemented into Illinois law, but we are most certainly pushing for it. And I think that it seems to me, based on many conversations that I've had, that's probably imminent in Illinois law, or it could be imminent. Like everybody wants it, but it hasn't been written in yet. I think they obviously have to, my opinion, clean up the mess that we're in right now.
Yeah, ICCA is a strong advocate. Our community certainly is a strong advocate of direct-to-consumer delivery. There's some discussion about whether or not it should be dispensary to consumer or also allow craft growers and craft infusers to do direct delivery. Now, I think that's probably further off in time, but is certainly conceivable at some point. Certainly, dispensary direct-to-consumer is desirable by the consumers and desirable by our transporter members. They'd like to be licensed to undertake that task.
Yep. And then next question is, I think a follow-up to previous. So thank you. So should I still go forward with planning or just wait until I hear something about licenses for that? I would plan. That's, as an entrepreneur, I'm saying you can plan to a certain point, because obviously there's no, legally you can't do anything with it yet, but you would want to be, what you don't want to do is be a person who is now behind the 8 ball, because now that they finally have issued things that, okay, all of the things that I had planned, I got to hurry up, or all the things that I could have planned, I got to hurry up and plan now to be able to do. You want to be able to say, when you see it coming, okay, now I know that I can start putting these pieces in place. That's at least as much as you can. That's just my personal opinion as an entrepreneur, not necessarily as an industry expert.
Fully agree with you, Tricia. I think particularly for transporters, infusers, and growers, there's a lot of preparation that's required, and the state will provide some grace for the 6 months to operational requirement, but not an indefinite amount. And what we've found is it takes about 6 months to be prepared once you have the application done. So this, to some extent, the extra time has afforded all of the applicants some preparatory time. Being able to do that with others that also are moving down the preparation journey can sometimes accelerate it. So if you've applied for craft grow or craft infusion or transport, happy to give you some contacts that might accelerate some of your planning activities.
And I would say that at minimum, what would probably put you ahead of the ball game if you're talking directly delivery, straight to consumer, is probably a transporter license, because it seemed to me like that would be the logical path to be able to open it up with. So, if you're looking at, because you didn't really specify. So if you were looking at home delivery, for example, it would be logical for the transporters to be able to expand into that.
Exactly.
More than anybody else.
Absolutely great point. I think that is the great precursor to, possibly going for one of those home delivery licenses, is take advantage of what's currently available now, so that you can have a leg in later.
Yep. Because I can see what the state would say is, well, these are the people who we've already vetted. We already know who they are, all of this information, and just open another avenue for them, as opposed to opening it for everyone. I don't see that happening. Okay, so next question is, who and where are your social equity applicant partners? This person sent this anonymously. I'm not exactly sure what they meant. Are you specifically asking, at least for ICCA member partners? I'm going to ask this person to please provide.
And in Belicia's interest, Tricia, I'm also happy to answer some of these just in the typed answer, and to let Belicia go ahead with her part of the presentation.
Okay.
And then come back.
There's only, let me.
And I can even chime in on that. They're asking, we're statewide, so we're actively welcoming members from all across the state. So majority of our members are in the Chicagoland area. However, we have members from Springfield, from downstate, from other areas all around central Illinois and north of Chicago as well. So I don't know if that touches on that particular question, but we are statewide and we welcome members across the state, and we want all social equity applicants to be a part of the conversation and to be able to take advantage of our resources and benefits. So we're open to the entire state.
Thank you, Belicia. And Paul, I assume the same is true for you as well?
That is correct. As I said earlier, about 60% of our, well, about 90, I think it's 97 or 98% of our members are social equity qualified, either through ownership or through employment. I don't have that specific breakdown to hand, but almost all are social equity qualified. About 60% of our members are Black or Hispanic owned businesses. So a majority of ours look like the community I think the governor and the state intended to serve. So we've had the good fortune of very diverse membership.
And location, are they mostly, I already know they're mostly Chicagoland.
Actually, it turns out a majority are outside the city of Chicago. If you look at those 455 just craft grow applicants, I'm gonna pick one. A majority of those are actually outside Chicago, interestingly. Now that could include Chicagoland area, meaning non-proper city or somewhere downstate. Lots of the grow facilities and a number of the infusion facilities are not in Chicago, and that's partly because of the zoning and property considerations. But we do have members from across the state. So,
and I think as it relates to the actual number of people that are outside of the city for the craft grow, is the actual location in which they apply for, not necessarily where they're residing.
Right, and I know for a fact that there are people who have applied, who live in the city but chose to apply downstate on purpose.
Yeah.
So, okay, so point of clarification, right now ComEd is only offering LED incentives beyond the 2.1 MMOLJ, not versus the reference HID lighting, due to what is written in the law. Are you considering asking for a fix that would allow them to pay based on a HID alternative like they would for any other industry?
Yeah, this one's a little unfair because to some extent, the medical folks actually get a head to LED benefits. So they're, as they upgrade or put in LED lightings, their incentive is way larger than for craft growers, because the way the craft law was written, they put a LED to 2.1 micromoles per joule in as the basis, and therefore it's a much smaller incentive for LED lighting. Interestingly, ComEd's told us they'd be happy to write a bigger check if the law wasn't the way it was. So they like the idea of these growers going to LED. So that is in discussion. It's one of the items. If you feel particularly strongly about that, would love to have an offline discussion with you. So, Stuart, I think that's a great point. So I've heard this one before. It's on our list. We're just going through the prioritization right now, but that would mean real cash dollars to growers.
And then Paul, this question I'm assuming is for you. How many social equity are on your board or are administrators?
From a social equity perspective, so from a social equity qualified application perspective, the other two current board members, both Bill Taki and Ambrose Jackson, are supporting social equity applications. Ambrose is an African American who is an applicant both for dispensary and for craft grow. Bill Taki is a former medical dispensary licensee, awardee. He successfully built medical dispensaries and subsequently sold that. He was a minority applicant, the only second of the only two that were awarded for medical dispensaries, and then is supporting today 3 social equity groups, proper social equity groups, with their craft applications. So that's the current board membership today.
Okay. And then I know you were typing I can see you were typing an answer about your statistics, so I'll let you get to that one. Yep. And then the other were just responses, so I will dismiss those, and then I will turn over to Belicia.
Thank you for having me, Trish. I once again want to echo what Paul has stated. I am proud of the work that you've done. I think I reached out to you early on to let you know exactly how excited I was about the things that you're doing in this particular arena, especially. It's very important, it's very needed. Part of the reason why Natasha and I got together to make Scene was because we felt that there was a lot of misinformation, and we were really, really, really excited about being advocates in the space and making sure that we are truly pushing reputable resources and pushing knowledge that people can rely on, and hopefully they be bricks or layers to their success in this industry and their future entrepreneurship endeavors. So everyone, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Belicia Royster. I'm the vice president of an organization called the Social Equity Empowerment Network. We go by the name of Scene. So welcome to the Scene. Can everyone see my screen? Great.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. I just want to give a historical overview, if I may, about the history about the war on drugs and how it's affected communities that were disproportionately enfranchised, as well as people that look like myself, Black and brown people across the country. Throughout the history, we've witnessed profoundly unequal outcomes with the war on drugs. Communities of color in America, high arrest, incarceration rates. These communities are not reflective currently of the industry that we are trying to get in, and the prevalence of drug use, but rather the law enforcements and focused on urban areas, lower income communities, and communities of color. Today's cannabis industry is riddled with strong barriers to entry for members of the Black and Latinx communities, yet the prison system continues to overwhelmingly house these people for drug offenses, while Caucasian men overwhelmingly monopolize the legal cannabis industry. What impact has that had? In the United States, the war on drug mostly impacts minorities, particularly the Black communities. We've been disenfranchised and disproportionately affected. And this is basically why it's always been classified as a form of systematic racism. Black communities are not any more likely to sell drugs than anyone else. However, they are much more likely to be incarcerated for drug offenses. It's been realized that this impact has been very detrimental to the overall trajectory of these communities, affecting everything from families, education, employment, healthcare, even the Social Security benefit funds, and generational wealth. The initiatives have basically increased single-family homes, increased dropout rates, decreased college enrollment and graduation rates, increased poverty, increased violence and mortality in these communities. Furthermore, the initiative has created excessive levels of imprisonment, punitive sentences for sentences practices, as well as mandatory sentencing and death sentencing practices as well. Sing. We're here to be heard, we're here to be seen, we're here to take action. I want to let you guys know a little bit about our story and how we came about. Like I said, leading up to legalization in Illinois, Natasha Neptune, the president of our organization, and myself met at a cannabis expo over a year ago. And through our thirst for knowledge, we were connected. We realized that we had a common interest, and as a result, we wanted to form a group that would be beneficial to other social equity applicants in the space. We met at a small coffee shop initially and formed a group of enthusiasts, and they were all interested in sharing information. We use that as a resource for one another, as a sounding board, so that we can, once again, as stated, we can really be a force so that we can provide reputable information for the industry and segues to get into the industry. We gathered shared ideas, provided real feedback and collaborative solutions to the lack of accessibility for Black and Brown people in the legal cannabis industry. Traditionally, trade associations offer incredible networking opportunities. They provide contacts and partners, applicants, valuable resources and tools to make careers and businesses successful. And that is what we saw that was definitely needed in the social equity application process. We decided to build and leverage a trade association offering specific skill building workshops, preparation for ownership. We also offer critical discounts. Kind of like Paul mentioned, we have built a relationship and a network with several businesses, vendors, and service providers that are needed for these entrepreneurs and business owners and future license holders to be successful in this industry. We're using this network to leverage our buying power because we realize that the MSOs do own majority of the product and the production and the processing of the products. And so it's important that we stand together as a collective to make sure that we're supporting each other and creating a sustainable ecosystem. You know, our policymakers have historically used prohibition as a means to control and sell for the consumption of these products. And in doing so, we realized that it was counterproductive. And so now here we are with our goal to make sure that we are at the helm of the point of entry and making sure that we have a seat at the table. Our goal is to become an impenetrable force on behalf of social equity applicants, owners, and entrepreneurs. And so it was on that day that we met at that cafe over a year ago that Sing was born. Our mission is basically exactly what I said. Seen as a cooperative advocate, pioneering leaders for responsible and progressive economic growth for African Americans and people of color in the cannabis industry. We are a consortium that is keenly aware of the impact of the war on drugs, that the impact that the war on drugs has had, and we continue to have on our communities, excuse me. We work earnestly to fight against disparities and inaccuracies of justice and social stigmas throughout our communities. And we stand collectively as a resource to learn, connect, grow, and sustain equitable ownership in this industry. We currently have over 400 people in our network, predominantly consisting of applicants that have applied for at least one phase of the applications. We are open to all applicants, all social equity applicants, retail applicants, craft grow applicants, transportation applicants, infusion applicants, and to the brother's question earlier, hopefully home delivery applicants in the future. Our network also consists of various subject matter experts across several industries and disciplines. So we have lawyers, accountants, human resources. All of these services are important to support these businesses as they come up, and as well as ancillary businesses, those that are looking to not necessarily be a license holder, but are looking to support those license holders and support the companies that are in the industry and are not necessarily interested in plant touching businesses. So we also are open to ancillary business owners as well, vendors and all those service providers. Our vision is that we're a consortium of cannabis businesses and entrepreneurs working earnestly to create a vibrant and equitable cannabis industry. It needs to serve those that were disenfranchised. We're looking to be a positive economic engine for our communities and partners, and we're looking to remove barriers to entry by advocating. Also by providing invaluable resources, best practices, and networking opportunities for cannabis entrepreneurs. Some of our benefits and offerings. We are an organization that is for us, by us. We are predominantly social equity applicants. We're all social equity applicants, I'm sorry, but predominantly Black and Brown. And we also have other people of color or of other demographics, but all social equity applicants, which makes us a true zealous advocate for equity in the cannabis industry. We are a platform for social equity applicants, business owners. We are here to be seen and heard, and we have exhibited that we have a resounding voice, and we're fighting for social equity issues as it exists for entrepreneurs in Illinois right now today. We're committed to being effective in changing the trajectory of our communities by way of economic development and enhancing the resources. It's a known fact that that although I think there's about 4% Hispanic ownership in the industry nationwide, there is 81% Caucasian ownership nationwide, but there is only 3% Black ownership. That's a problem, especially when we are 4 times susceptible to arrest for marijuana in this country. We've created a network of future owners, license holders, ancillary businesses committed to supporting one another for a push for sustainability in this industry. Ultimately, creating a more diverse ecosystem is what is most important to our group. Just imagine, just to thinking about some of the things that Paul mentioned. He talked about the power of craft. I propose to everyone the power of equity. How would that look for us if we actually had an equitable place at the table? What it would do is create an equitable ecosystem that provides benefits to the people that need it. People everywhere that are looking to have these provisions of regulatory and cultural services that affect all of our communities, especially the ones that have gone unnoticed and underserved. And so that's why we are here to provide resources such as advocacy, events and networking opportunities, legal and risk management services, education, savings and discounts to all of the vendors that we talked about earlier, exclusive members benefits, and much, much more to come. Just to give you a snippet of some of our programming, we're currently concluding the year with the first half of our financial webinar. So we've had everything from how to raise capital to cannabis business one-on-one, doing a deep dive on audits, allocations, taxes, and things of that nature. Soon, at the beginning of the year, we'll be completing our financial webinar series. We'll feature more information around taxes and audits. We'll also do a deep dive in setting up your business, your entities, and things of that nature. One of our first town hall meetings consisted of legislators as well as some very predominant social justice members and expert subject matter experts, excuse me. This was an extremely enlightening town hall. And so we're looking to have more and more of those in the future. We also have a ongoing campaign currently for a disparity study. As you know, based on the occurrences in the state, we are awaiting a disparity study for them to see exactly what happened in this round. As we all know, we don't need a study to show us that there's been a complete debacle. However, based on that intel, we feel it's important that the social equity applicants have a voice. And so we have decided to conduct our own disparity study. And so I'll share information on how you can contact us in the future. And if you want to be a part of it, you can feel free to reach out to us. Some video, very simple process, but we're looking to relaunch that. Some of our advocacy work. As you know, these licenses, the license decisions came out at the beginning of September. And of course, it took us all by surprise. So as a result, we took action. We held several press conferences, were a part of a few protests to make sure that our words are being heard. We're being seen, constantly overlooked, and throughout history, the percentages show, the statistics show that we're overlooked in this industry. And so it is important for us at this moment and this time, especially in the year of 2020, when social justice and social inequality and equity is being galvanized right now. This is our time to be seen. And I think that this particular law is extremely important, that we make sure that social equity is at the helm and the forefront of the dissemination of this opportunity and these opportunities within this industry. We've also done several pushes for legislation to make changes into a trailer bill. So we've reached out to we're reaching out weekly on a constant basis to the lawmakers and the General Assembly so that we are able to give them suggestions about how we can correct this wrong of how things have rolled out in Illinois. And so these are just a few of the times that we were featured at some of our outcry. Once again, my name is Belicia Royster. We can be reached at hello@equityempower.org. You can find us on Facebook at Social Equity Empowerment, Instagram at Equity Empower. We're also on LinkedIn, and our website is equityempower.org. I welcome any questions at this time, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Belicia. I'm going to make a request of both you and Paul, and ask that, particularly as it relates to your legislative suggestions, I would love to have that list and to see that list, partially because one of the things that came out of today's conversation with the governor's office is, what are changes that we should make, right? So that gives me an opportunity to advocate for you guys, both on the legislative side, even though we know that the governor can't make laws, but the governor can pass that information on to the legislators. And so that was something that specifically came up. So I want to be able to say, hey, our people gave me a list. So I would be able to, carry that into that conversation for you. And I'll be happy to do that because I've been, as you know, I've been advocating for you guys as much as possible.
Absolutely.
And then if there's anything else specifically, especially as it relates to the social equity program, I'd love to see that as well, which I know may or may not be included in your legislative suggestions. So
yeah, it is.
I figured it was, but I'm lumping that in specifically.
Absolutely. We have a working one pager that we initially were going to present for veto session. Veto session ended up not happening. And so now we're looking for what they call a lame duck session. And we are now building upon that one pager that we were soliciting to all the legislators. And now we're basically compiling an ongoing comprehensive list of all the changes that we and suggestions that we have. And we're chipping away at the General Assembly currently doing our own advocacy work.
Okay. Awesome.
And I will definitely share
awesome.
with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Also happy to, Tricia, just as to build on Belicia's point, there's been great collaboration so far, in my opinion, between the organizations like SEEN, Normal, ICCA, and a lot of synergy among some of those legislative agenda items. And they really fall into two categories: fixes, things that need to get redressed that were clearly wrong, transparency and communication being one of those. As an example, I think that's pretty consistent across dispensary and craft. And then improvements for the future to make the businesses that all the folks that have made the investment in to make them better and stronger and more sustainable. And so those improvements is really a second category. And it's clear the state, at least the feedback we've had through the process, has been very open to receiving both. But there's going to take, we can't deal with everything. So the more we can find an aligned message as a whole cannabis community, I think the stronger we're going to be. So look forward to continuing to collaborate with Belicia and others.
Awesome. And also, in full disclosure for both of you, the second reason why I'm asking for this list is because I actually got invited by Higher Yields to be a part of a symposium that they're having next month. And so as it relates to other states looking at what they might want to do in their social equity programs, I would not be doing my job correctly if I went into this conversation and talk about Illinois programs without talking about the problems with Illinois programs and making sure that people don't repeat the same mistakes, so that other social equity applicants in other states hopefully do not have some of the same hurdles and obstacles that you all have had to encounter in the program that we have right now.
Absolutely. I think that the national conversation is really pivotal in how this rolls out federally. And so if we do this right state by state and making sure that equity is infused in the process, then we can definitely be prepared for federal legalization when it comes. But it has to be done right on a micro level before a macro level.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah. So I'll be looking for those. All right. So I have belabored the conversation enough. I'm looking for any other questions and questions that anybody might have. And I want to also say to both of you, thank you both for the advocacy that you all have done, because it's a lot to put yourself out there. Okay, so I saw someone has their hand raised. Can you please type your question in the Q&A box? If there's a reason why you can't, you could send me a question in the chat and tell me why you can't, and I'll maybe turn your mic on. But I typically don't turn on mics except for panelists, so I put everything in. We put everything in Q&A, pull from Q&A and put it on our website, which we have done in the past. So, but you guys have done, I know it's a lot to be the person that's out there in the forefront, because sometimes you also get seen as the troublemaker from the state's perspective and whatnot. And so there's a lot of, as you guys also as applicants, I know that there's a lot of risk involved with being that person that's in front of the cameras and, talking to everybody all of the time. So I applaud you both for your efforts and the things that you've done to advocate for everyone. Because there's hundreds of people who have applied, but there's only a handful of you. So
That is so true. And I'd have to lean towards what John Lewis used to say, may he rest in peace. We're going to get in good trouble for this fight.
Good trouble. That's right. Right. That's right.
It's well worth it. I think that if we can take the bull by the horns now, sometimes the squeaky wheel hopefully gets the oil. And so we're looking to make sure that if it takes us to get out there and constantly make noise surrounding this, then that's what we need to do to see some real change. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. So, here we go. Here's a question. Are details available to support ICCA stats? And Paul just typed, yes, the member statistics are from a membership survey. That asks, and it says the financial statistics are from a financial model built by ICCA and its research team and calibrated, confirmed with various organizations. And Paul said he's willing to discuss further if you're interested. So, any other questions? If not, and I'll wait because I always do this every time I say, are there more questions? And then there's not, and I start to close out and then there's a question. So just want to reiterate, we do have a session tomorrow afternoon at 12:30. Sinette put the bit.ly link in the chat so you can go directly to the site and register for tomorrow. If you have not registered already, tomorrow's session is going to be done by, I was about to say Belicia Royster. No, that's not right. Shawnee Williams with Illinois Equity Staffing. And it's about recruiting specifically for your cannabis business. Oh, okay. Yeah, so please feel free to contact Paul to talk about that in more detail. And then this is obviously the last, no, not today, tomorrow's the last thing we have before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everyone. Hope you all have a happy and safe holiday and that everyone is staying safe. If there's anything, I will put this out there. If any of you have anything that you'd like to see or suggest, please feel free to send us an email. You can send it, let me type it in the chat, to cannabis@thetrepschool.com. And then that way both myself and Sinette will be able to see it. Obviously, since I'm now in conversations with the governor's office, and for those of you who weren't here at the beginning, we've been doing this since February. This is the first conversation I've had with anybody in the governor's office. So now that we have the ear of the governor's office, please, anything that I can do to advocate, I'm all about standing up and getting in good trouble as well. So I'll be happy to do that. I don't have any skin in the game because I don't have an application out there that somebody could pull. I'm just out here to support you all. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this. And then lastly, I will ask for this minor plug. If ever you have an opportunity where you get a chance to send feedback directly to DCEO, please let them know how pleased you are with what we have been providing. I know I hear from you when you guys, and yes, one more thing, yes, respond to our survey requests because those surveys get passed on. They get passed on to DCEO and they get passed on to the governor's office. So there's also an opportunity at the bottom of every survey we do that says, if you have any other feedback, feel free to type whatever you want in there. I do pass all that information on. And I know that everybody, in terms of all of the technical assistance partners, haven't always asked for survey feedback. Melvin, you said you requested to join Facebook group. I'm assuming you're talking to Belicia or Paul because I don't have a Facebook group. Well, I do, but not for this. And it's dormant. So I'm assuming that was directed at one of them. Okay, thanks. So yes, but feel free to please share whatever feedback that you have because it does my heart good to see that the work that we're doing means something to you guys, because I was not involved in the cannabis industry at all. I'm just out here trying to serve entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur whose business is to serve entrepreneurs. And I don't care what business you're in, you're supposed to succeed in it. And I'm gonna do my damnness to make sure that you can be successful. So I'm hoping that you all see that that's my heart, to support you guys just like any other business. So with that, I have, that's all I have to say. I don't see any more questions. So everyone have a good night. Thank you for coming. If I don't see you tomorrow, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you so much for having us. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.